Guys, can you just message me whether I'm audible or not now? Okay. Sorry guys, my mic was off. Okay, that's why I've asked you in the beginning whether it is clear or not. So guys, what I was telling so far is, uh, uh, I'm not able to sit for a long time. So I'll take a short session today. I'll be discussing the social movement chapter quickly. Will take hardly 20 minutes. And then tomorrow also I'll take a session. So like instead of taking a long session today, I'll take one more session tomorrow. And there I will cover the tribes and caste. So these three chapters is what is coming along with the PDF. So first I'll do social movement, and this 40 minutes, 45 minutes session, I'm splitting into two. Today I will do 20 minutes, and then tomorrow also I'll do that because I cannot sit for a long time. Okay. So we are going to discuss social movements. Now here, what is the source mainly? Whatever I'm giving to you, that itself is going to be enough for you. But in case if you need to add more, read, IGNO MA program of political science, not sociology. That will cover all the social movement. Even though they have mentioned about 5 social movements in the syllabus, there is a possibility if they want, they can ask you more. So just have an idea about others which is not mentioned in the syllabus directly. Okay, so just go through that. If not, it is perfectly fine. We will be sticking to the syllabus and we will be doing that. And you can also go through Vajiram class notes, this chapter. It is very good in that materials, or Ghanshyam Shah. Any of this is fine. But even if you're sticking to our notes, that in itself will be enough. It is perfectly fine if you don't want to, go through that pain or anything. Okay, this is again enough. You can learn all these things and you can remember all those things mentioned, and then you can reproduce also. Now, guys, there may be situations where they will ask you contemporary movements. For example, in your syllabus, it is women movement. Okay, but they can ask you contemporary women movement, new women movement, like that they will ask you. So for that, what you need to do, add is here something which is mentioned. Beyond that, you need to go like what is the contemporary movements which is going on. Like you can also talk about Me Too movement, right? When you're discussing about that, you need to also talk about the social consequences of this. How is it used? How is it misused? What are the social consequences? How is it affecting others? How it is affecting the morale of others? And all those things you need to mention. Functions, dysfunctions, with examples you need to mention. Okay, so that is what you need to add. When I say you need to add from current affairs, these are things you need to add from current affairs. Similarly, if you see farmers movement, last year we were expecting this question. Why? Because this was in the news and the movements which is going on related to farmers issues and everything. So that was expected and the question was there. So obviously you will be writing those content which you are coming across through the newspapers. So this is a chapter where the content which is given is enough, plus you need to update it with the current affair. Okay, now we have 5 movements which is there in the syllabus. You can expect 2 questions out of that. So this is the first one, peasants and farmers movement. So when you see peasants and farmers movement, first thing that you need to know is the conceptual difference between peasant as a category and farmers as a category, because they can ask you 2 different questions. What is peasant movement? What is farmers movement? So don't club it together. Both are entirely different conceptual category. What do you mean by peasant? When I say as a category or a group of people, these are who are motivated for subsistence purpose, who are doing agricultural activity for subsistence purpose with small land holding and all, right? When it comes to farmers, this is for profit motive, considering agriculture for profit motive with commercial interest with somewhat large scale land holding. If you remember last day, when I'm talking about the classes in India, in that agricultural classes in India, we have discussed about different classes, like Alavi said this, right? You remember rich farmers, middle farmers, colonial landlords, rich landlords. So different categories we have mentioned. In that, if you see, post Green Revolution, the rich farmer categories are emerging, right? So when I talk about farmers movements or farmers as such, it is going to be more relevant after the Green Revolution, because after the Green Revolution only agriculture have seen as an enterprise which is going to create more and more income, profit. Okay, so I hope you got the conceptual difference between these two that need to be mentioned in your answer. So peasant as a category goes to this and farmers like this. Obviously their demands will be different. Farmers demands will be what? They will demand free agriculture, free electricity, free water, right? A high MSP, subsidies, and all those things is what their demand is. And with respect to WTO, also they have certain demands and everything. I've mentioned everything in the PDF. When it comes to peasants, peasant movements, mostly you will see pre-independence during British time against the exploitative practices, against the land tenure system, land revenue system, zamindari system, Ryotwari system, Mahalwari system, all those things briefly mentioned, mainly against the exploitative practices, against the money lenders and all those. And this is mainly subsistence purpose. Their demands also very less. So pre-independence. Now within that category, pre-independence, you will divide it into pre-1920 and 1920 to 1947, or pre-Kisan Sabha, post-Kisan Sabha, up till 1947. So I'll divide first into pre-independence and post-independence. Pre-independence, I divide pre-Kisan Sabha, post-Kisan Sabha. Post-Kisan Sabha like 20 onwards, right? So why 1920 onwards? Mainly the peasant issues are addressed along with national movement, freedom struggle. So the leaders are also nationalist leaders, okay? Freedom struggle like Mahatma Gandhi, and the strategy is Gandhian strategy, ideology also Gandhian ideology, the leadership also, and everything that you can mention. So like here you will see pre-Kisan Sabha movement, read that, like Chambaran, Bardoli and all those things, you can write example. Then this is post-Kisan Sabha 1947 to 60, their demands, leadership. Now one thing that you need to keep in mind is whenever you discuss about any social movement, talk about the goal of each movement, leadership or level of organization, obviously which is required, ideology which is used. Sometimes the leaders may come from within, sometimes the leaders may come from outside. Like when I told you post-Kisan Sabha, leaders are generally nationalist leaders. Similarly, when I'm going to discuss about women movement, I'll tell you pre-independence women movements or during freedom movement, the leaders are not from women, right? They are like Brahmo Samaj, Raja Ram Mohan Roy. So there is a parent movement. The leaders are based on that only. But later women movement, you will see women leaders also. So you need to talk about leadership, any movement when you're discussing goal, whether the goal is achieved or not, or to what extent the goal is achieved, level of organization, what ideology is used, and all those things need to be there in your answer. Any movement you talk about, okay? The post-Green Revolution, their demands, you can talk about Naxalite movements and everything, right? That ideology will be Marxist ideology. Their goal will be different, right? Now, farmers movement, talk about that, free electricity, free water, decrease in user charges, increase in MSP. Their demands also different. Okay. Now, next is backward caste movement. Guys, one question is for sure from this, not one question, two questions are for sure from this five topics. That's why I'm spending, one session for social movement, because you can expect two questions and it's a must attend question. Never leave it. Okay. So backward caste movement. Now, when I say backward caste movement, what do you mean by backward caste? What are the forward caste? Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, forward caste. When I say backward caste, Shudra. Dalit, Avarna. So when I say backward caste, it includes Shudra and Dalit. Dalit can be asked as separate Dalit movement also. But when I say in general, forward caste, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya. Backward caste, Shudra and Dalit. So they can ask you backward caste movement. So generally you talk about Shudra's movement. Okay. They can also ask you Dalit movement specifically. There you talk about Mahar movement and everything. I'll come to that. So Dalit movements are specifically related to Dalits. Then there are different cleavages like Brahmin versus non-Brahmins. There can be different cleavages, right? That is like this Brahmin versus non-Brahmin. Satyashodak Samaj, Justice Party movement, everything. Brahmins and upper non-Brahmins. So what I mean by this is a group. Brahmin, upper non-Brahmin, upper non-Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya. They are one group. Shudra, that is actually backward caste movement. Then Dalit versus all. What is that? Dalit movement. So specifically when I talk about backward caste movement, this is a second category. Shudra versus upper category. When I say Dalit movement, this is a movement. But there can be these cleavages also. Okay. So all these examples and everything is there. You need to go through that, explain it. The goal, the organization, the leadership, the ideology and everything need to be there in each and every movement. Okay. And then Towards the end, you talk about this Dalit movement. Here I'm talking about Dalit movement also. Dalit movement, okay? Then guys, when I talk about women movement, first I'm taking this question, patriarchy and sexual division of labor. That is there in chapter paper 1 and in paper 2 also. What is patriarchy? Male dominance. What is sexual division of labor? Division of labor on the basis of sex. So here you need to talk about Sylvia Valby, you need to talk about Anne Oakley, and if in the Indian thinkers are there, if it is paper 2, you can mention about that also. And examples, I've mentioned everything here. Patriarchy at the family level. Patriarchy means male dominance. At the societal level also, both you need to discuss. Sylvia Valby understood this as private patriarchy and public patriarchy. I've mentioned it before, if you remember. Private patriarchy within family, public patriarchy outside the society, outside the family. All those things, please read that. And different theories, biological theory, economic explanations, and all are required in your answer. Violence against women. This can be an essay. It can be in paper 2, last chapter, topic is there. Violence against women, what I'll do is I'll divide into manifest and latent. You know what is manifest and latent. Manifest is actual act of aggression. Latent means hidden, discriminatory practices. Within manifest, I'll divide into in family and wider society. That means actual act of aggression in family. What are they? Marital rape, domestic violence, and all those things. Outside society, sexual harassment, rape, and all those things. Okay. Then latent. Latent means not actual act of aggression. It's a discriminatory practices like discriminate within family, again outside family. Both you can divide and you will get 4 paragraphs. Within family, discrimination in terms of health, education, right, and all those things you can mention. Food. Outside society, outside family, low salary for same jobs, indecent representation. All these are examples you can write. So this is going to be a very good answer if you can follow that format and if you write it. Everything is given. You can add more, but one thing you keep in mind, guys, you need to write it in paragraph. Even though I've given it in bullet points, you have to write it in paragraph. Okay, I'll give you the paragraph form also when I share the PDF. One minute. Okay, now we will have to see women movement. Okay. Okay, so like what we have discussed before, we have to discuss about pre-independence and post-independence. Okay, what are the pre-independence women movement? Talk about Brahmo Samaj, Arya Samaj, even Prarthana Samaj. Everywhere women issues are addressed. Even in Buddhism, also women issues have addressed. Okay, so talk about all those socio-religious reform movements like Brahmo Samaj, Prarthana Samaj, Arya Samaj, Ramakrishna Mission, Kisan Sabha movement. Okay, and then freedom struggle. In that also women questions are addressed. You can see women participation. But who are the leaders, guys? Is there any female leaders during this time? No, right? If you talk about all these movements, the parent movement have different leader and the ideology will be based on the parent movement. Women questions are addressed within that. For example, when you talk about nationalist movement, the main issue is freedom. In that, women question is also addressed. So when I talk about parent movement, the ideology, Gandhian ideology, leadership, Mahatma Gandhi and freedoms to the main nationalist leaders. So talk about that. To what extent goals are achieved. Guys, also you need to talk about the achievements. Brahmo Samaj, Rajaram Mohan Roy's effort, anti-Sati resolution. Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, what is that? Widow Remarriage Act, right? And then ban on female infanticide and all those things you need to mention. These are achievements. And these achievements are satisfactory also at that point of time. Okay, everything is there. Everything is there, guys. You need to talk about that. Ideology, varied as per parent movement, urban areas in the beginning before. Now, post-independence, there are different movements. One is developmental women movement. Like women problem can be solved if there is a development, economic development. So these are examples. Shaitkari Sangetna, choir workers movement, Lizai puppet movement, Seva movement. Okay, this one, self-employed women association in Gujarat. Examples. Ecological women movement. because women are the most, you know, maximum sufferer of the ecological degradation. So talk about Chipko movement and everything. Okay, leadership I've mentioned here, local leadership, and these were successful also. Then issue-based movement. These are specific movement. Like uh, before we discussed about general movement, specific means anti-alcoholic movement, anti-dowry movement, anti-sati movement. All these are specific movements. Now there are other contemporary movements. You talk Panchayat Raj institutions. You know, they are playing big, huge role now. So that led to empowerment of women. Also, there are issues like Sarpanch, Padi, and all. You know that you can talk about that. Reservation movement at the level of state legislature and parliament. Talk about that. Our RTI movement, and whatever contemporary examples you see, add that. Like what I've told you, Me Too movement and all those things you can add. It's up to you guys. Okay. Now, this is another topic: crisis of development. As a part of development, obviously some, you know, displacement and all those issues will come. That's what we mean by crisis. Explained it here. What are the problems related to displacement? There are direct displacement. That means when there is a developmental project is coming, you will be evicted. That is direct. Indirect means in your area there is no development, so you will migrate to some other area. That is like pull factor. You know, when you talk about migration, there is push pull migration, right? Exactly the same, pull factor. Similarly, these are the problems. Just go through the problems: calculation of displaced population, the compensation, social settlement, emotional settlement, psychological settlement of people, and all these things, cultural aspects, and everything you need to mention. Hardships faced by women, aged, children, animal, everything. How is it affecting kinship, caste, class? Okay, guys, talk about all these dimensions. What you need to do in paper 2 is, any topic that you're getting, you just need to bring in all the dimensions which are possible. You talk about inequality, you talk about caste, you talk about class, you talk about family, you talk about women, you talk about age, you talk about different classes, migration. At least these points, if it is there somewhere or the other in your answer, you're going to score good. And if you know thinkers for these case, you can write as an example. If you don't know thinkers, don't worry about that. You will be writing this answer, which is very sociological. This is how you can make it sociological. Beyond that, you can't do anything, right? Now, guys, environmental movement. There is a definition which is given here. Go through that definition. It should be there in your answer. According to Gadgil and Guha, what is environmental movement? And then there are two types: pure environmental movement, but this is of not that significance. Like these are pure movement, like air pollution movement, water pollution movement, which is elitist movement, which is coordinated by NGOs, schools, and NSS, you know, that organizations like that. But environmental movement linked with other issues. This is very important, like Chipko movement, which is having other issue also, right? Anti-dam movement, like that. So Chipko movement, tribal forest right movement, Pani Panchayat, anti-dam movement, fisherman movement. What strategy? Different strategies: Gandhian strategy, Marxian strategy. Then there is a reconstructionist movement. What is that? You provide alternative. Instead of large dam, go for smaller dams. That is what this Narmada Bachao Andolan. Okay. Consequences, impact. You need to mention. To what extent successful? Who are the leadership? What ideology? Okay. Okay. Now, guys, ethnic movement, very important. You need to understand the concept here. When I talk about ethnicity, it is nothing but a commonality. Somebody who's having the same culture, they are an ethnic group. So, what is a commonality? Commonality can be language, region, religion, it can be culture, it can be anything. But we will take what? We will broadly take culture. Why? Because we don't take religion, because we study it separately. Region we don't take, that is regionalism, we study separately. Language, linguism. Caste, we study it as backward caste movement. So when I talk about ethnic movement, I take culture. This is what I mean by composite culture. Composite marker. Sorry, composite marker. There are ethnicity can be understood in terms of individual marker. That is what I mean by each of these. It's an individual marker. Commonality based on region, commonality based on religion, commonality based on language. These are individual markers. But culture means it's a composition of multiple aspects, different norms, values, and things are involved in that. So When I talk about ethnic movement in India, we study that based on composite marker. But since you're writing in paper 2, you don't want to mention this also in detail. Western scholars consider individual marker also as ethnic movement. That means when we talk about regionalism, that is also ethnic movement for Western scholars, but not for us, Indian sociology. When we talk about communalism, that is based on religion, mobilization based on religion, that is also commonality. That is an individual marker. That is considered as ethnic movement by Western scholars, but not us. So for us, composite marker. Composite marker means complex of norms and values. What do you mean by complex of norms and values? It is nothing but culture. Perfect? So culture centric. So what is the typical example of ethnic movement, guys? Tribal movement. Okay. Now here there are real ethnicity, the original ethnicity, imagined or constructed ethnicity for the purpose of mobilization. Now these are different types: intra-ethnic group movement, inter-ethnic group versus state. Intra means within a group, like Shia Sunni movement within Muslim. Intra. Inter means outsider insider movement. Muslim non-Muslim movement in Jammu Kashmir, or Hindu versus non-Hindu movement, nativist movement. All these are inter-ethnic group, between two groups. Ethnic group versus state, those are very dangerous form of movement. It is for, secession from the country. Okay. Now again, based on state reorganization movement, when you discuss about regionalism also, there are different types of movement: intra-state movement, that is within state; interstate movement, that is separate state movement, demand for separate state; demand for secession, insurgency movement. This is something which is coming in ethnic movement only. But again, this is what you mean by regionalism also. This is exactly what you will write in regionalism. But I'll name it differently there. Intrastate movement, yes. Interstate movement, yes. Third one, I name it as suprastate movement. Okay. Then special reference to tribes. Guys, this topic, ethnic conflict, you don't want to study separately. Why you don't want to study separately? Ethnic movement you have studied exactly the same as what you write here also. The causes are the same as that of ethnic movement. The different type of ethnic conflicts, what are they? Intra-ethnic group conflict. It is Shia Sunni conflict. Inter-ethnic group conflict, outsider, insider, like that conflict, right? Ethnic group versus state, the third category. That is also a conflict. So it is the same. That is why I have written here. I've given the same example, but not more content, because you need to add it from the previous one. You don't want to study this separately. Okay. Guys, any doubt you have? Because we will be stopping this session today. I've done with 5 social movements. Tomorrow, I will discuss tribal society and caste system. And then we will go with the other chapters, maybe 1 or 2 sessions, and then we can move to question papers, actual question papers. Any doubts here, guys? If not, we can stop here. I'm sorry for this short session because I'm not able to sit for a long time. I got hurt in gym and I'm going for a treatment. So it will take 7 days for me to, be okay. Okay, guys. So I'll share the questions after tomorrow's session, because these are together, like what we have done last day. Okay. And then this social movement, tribal society, and then caste system. Or these 3 I can give you separately. The previous one also I can share separately. If that is the case, I can share the questions today or tomorrow morning. Okay, guys. See you. We'll stop here.